Hi, and welcome. It's TARDIScuss episode 6, Demons in the Punjab, and tonight we are talking history, some episode trivia, and then we're going to dive into the episode with Into the TARDIS, and then we're going to finish with our episode Hills We're Going to Die On. I'm Emily, and tonight for our discussion, I had chicken tikka masala. It's not technically region specific, and I am having some ginger ale and cranberry juice. And I want to make sure you let us know your thoughts on tonight's episode on the socials, Twitter and YouTube with the hashtag TARDIScuss. Our episode is historic in nature as we discuss the history of the partition of India in 1947. But before that, we want to talk about how most Doctor Who time travel stories tend to focus on bigger historical figures. So, our question of the week is, who is your favorite historical person in an episode? I'll let Laura and Lorena think on that. My answer to that question is difficult because I'm torn between two: Agatha Christie or Madame de Pompadour from Girl in the Fireplace, since it's one of my favorite episodes. Laura, what's your answer?
Sorry. So hey guys, it's Laura. Tonight I'm drinking water because I'm super boring. So I have my giant cup of unnecessarily large cup of water. My favorite historical figure from an episode, it's actually two episodes, and that would have to be Richard Nixon. And I think just that the actor that played Richard Nixon was amazing. And I thought that kind of the chemistry they had was fantastic with Matt Smith's doctor. So that's definitely mine. How about you, Lorena?
Hello, it's Lorena. I am having chai tea because we all said we were going to have chai tea, but only I did, apparently, out of my disappearing TARDIS mug, which the TARDIS is over here now. Yeah, I'm having some issues deciding on my historical figure because I actually like a fictional historical figure. So it's kind of like if we count Doctor Who as the future as being truly historical, I would say mine is the Captain Adelaide Brooke, who's from the Waters of Mars episode and led the first manned mission to Mars. And she dies in the episode in 2059. So that was my favorite. But if I had to pick like actual art history, I think Charles Dickens, which is from the 9th season, the first of the new seasons. I just love that episode. It was creepy and fun, and he plays he's kind of buffoony in the whole thing. He's not really the hero. So I find that interesting, and it has the ghost with Dickens, and he's such a ghost story kind of guy. So yeah, I would go with him if I had to go in the past.
Awesome. So we are discussing the Demons of the Punjab, which I just love this episode. It was written by Vinay Patel, and it's takes place in India 1947, and we had a couple of articles that we saw. One was from Entertainment Weekly, one was from Digital Spy. What did you guys think about either of those articles? Did you guys have a chance to read them? Lorena, I think you posted the Digital Spy article.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like super insightful. It was sort of like a preview for the episode and some quotes from the author that I think they might have stolen from Radio Times interview. But yeah, he was just talking about how he wanted to, bring this story to kind of the larger public and show the ramifications of partition and how, like, what happened then, it's still impacting us today, but it's not something that's talked about a lot. So I thought that was interesting, and it obviously was like important and close to him because he mentioned that, like, it was telling the story right, like with the right level of meaning and reverence, was while still being within Doctor Who. That was like his biggest concern, what kept him up at night. And I thought that was nice to read. And I think he hit that balance personally. So
Great. I think we're going to talk about that, how, you're still able to maintain the Doctor Who-ness. We talked about that a little bit during the Rosa Parks episode, and how it could still deal with something with this depth, and does it still feel like a Doctor Who episode? And the Entertainment Weekly article, they mentioned that last year was the 70th anniversary of partition, and a lot of people were thinking about this, and we'll get into a little bit more about, did we just not know enough about it because we're American? Did everybody in the UK know about this? We'll dive in a little bit deeper when we get into that. We're going to really quick. Last week, we tried to think about if there was anything that we missed, and nobody could come up with anything. So, in case you are thinking we skipped over that little section, we didn't miss anything last week. So we're just going to dive right on in to some non-episode stuff, or plot stuff. It is still related to the episode. Like I said, we were talking about the Entertainment Weekly and Digital Spy articles. Um, you know, there's so many times that we learn about bits and pieces of history through the TV shows that we watch, and the one of the Entertainment Weekly questions that I just loved, I borrowed a little bit of it for our question. Um, they asked, here the focus is an event connected to England, but it also challenges the English assumptions about their own history and their role in the world. And I wanted to know your guys' thoughts about, what do you think about this having a place in Doctor Who with India and that. Lorena, did you have some thoughts?
I mean, probably nothing revolutionary. But yeah, I think anything that has to do with English or British history has a place in Doctor Who, especially this story and this event. I think we're probably going to get to that during trivia, but in the modern Who, it's the first time we've really been to India, seen anything like this, really looked at the empire kind of historically, and not with Queen Victoria in Scotland at the Torchwood home. And that's really just the time period, not the empire part. So yeah, I definitely think that, to use their tag phrase, it's about time. Let's talk about it. Let's see it. And, I think you put in here something about, like, no, that's me. That's my thought. Okay. my thought in here, I'm looking at a document, sorry, is that I always think Doctor Who wants to provide kind of that, like, almost like I don't want to call it a morality tale, but which way should your moral compass point? And they have, like when we learn about the Ood and they're a slave race, like, what does that really mean? And Donna's like, we have to free them. It's sort of pointing you in a direction as the viewer of what's right, what's wrong, and how does that, how does that have a greater impact? So I was glad that they took this topic and took this, you know, event that happened and set those same Doctor Who parameters to it. You know, I referenced a future story as my example, and I would say most of their future stories do that, or rather, the majority of the stories that do that, or really like expressively a moral compass type story, happen in the future with something that they're viewing as is occurring right now and may continue to occur, or humans went out and did what Britain did, you know, to the world. Here, like, is this the same idea? It's almost like imperialism happening like in the universe by humans. So that kind of idea, we see a lot. We see that future in the future, how it's going to be, but it's rare that we get all the way into the past and see what did actually happen, and then have that, how that is impacting our companions living in the current time. So yeah, I was excited to see it, and I was excited that we got to witness kind of like a war type setting that wasn't World War II, London Blitz. I feel like every British show I ever watch shows that, and has Churchill, and is just, you know, about, it's almost like that's the only thing that happens. So it's really nice to see more history on the screen.
Awesome. Laura, did you have any thoughts?
Honestly, this is just a subject that I know so very little about that I'm just kind of taking it all in and going from there. So my slate is pretty clear at this moment.
Okay. I just didn't want you to be left out. So let's take a look at some trivia. This landscape, I discovered in the closer look that they filmed this in the south of Spain, which did a fantastic double for the region. So I thought that really did a great job.
I have a question for you,
Yes.
Emily, on that, because I didn't watch that. I guess behind the scenes or closer look or whatever. Were the mountains? Could you see the mountains there? Because I didn't know if those were real.
Those were real, but the mountain range that he called them, which I didn't then look up, he called them the Sierra Nevadas, which I live in California, and there's a mountain range called the Sierra Nevadas that are here in between California and Nevada. Is there a Sierra Nevada range in Spain?
Yes, there is.
Okay, so there you go. They were at the base of that.
Okay.
So those are the mountains that they used to stand in for the mountains that you would see somewhere near that Lahore region of Pakistan and India there on the border. Also, while Lorena mentioned in the TV show, we haven't seen any visits to India. There was a novelization slash audiobook that was called The Ghosts of India, which I loved, that takes place in India, also 1947, but it takes place in Calcutta, and it is David Tennant's doctor and Donna, and they arrive shortly before Gandhi. They arrive to help Gandhi and survive an assassination attempt shortly before he passes away in 1948. So they are also arriving around the same time before all of that happens. So there are violent events, some other things that are happening. I remember it being a really fascinating story that I really enjoyed, and I think it was read by David Tennant also. So, um, Another trivia thing, there was a part where Mandeep was giving her lines as she was trying to explain who they were, and they were from a couple of valleys over, and Uncle Malik and um, Tosin fell out of the cart, and there is video of it. It's on tape and everything. If you go to one of the Doctor Who Facebook pages, or if you have the closer look, and you have purchased this season, you can catch that all on tape. Tosin's not pleased with that. Lorena,
It's really, yeah, it was really funny. And actually, I've watched some, like, a decent amount of interviews with Tosin, and I feel like he did think it was really funny. He has a really good sense of humor, and when he was at San Diego Comic-Con, I remember in the panel thinking like he was kind of a tool. But then when he's like in a smaller interview, he's just like really, really funny. And I think it was just like he did admit to it. He's like, I was so overwhelmed, I just like shut down at like Hall H or whatever. But yeah, he's really funny. Just like that good irreverent British humor. He really has it. So
yeah,
recommend.
And you had a piece of trivia?
Oh yeah, speaking of irreverence, Bradley Welsh is ridiculous. But yeah, I was researching for this podcast, and I finally looked up Bradley Welsh. And yeah, he was like the main guy of Law and Order UK, which also had Freema Agyeman, we still don't know how to say her last name, who obviously played Martha Jones. And I thought, oh, that's funny. So that was my quick trivia on Bradley Welsh, who's Graham.
I wonder if, and I wish we would have known this, if they would have, when Chris Noth was on, because he had such a long career on Law and Order here in the US, if they had that. So if they talked Law and Order and their time there, I don't know.
I don't
look for the
know.
connections.
I think they're both like funny people. So maybe they did.
Yeah. So we've got Chelsea who's watching us. And Chelsea is drinking some tequila. So
Yeah.
she's in for some there. So
She's caring for us all. I love it.
Yes, we've got a couple of other people watching. So say hi in the comments. And also, we've got Laura monitoring the socials over on Instagram, so be sure to check us out there.
And Twitter.
And Twitter. Oh, say hi on Twitter. Hashtag TARDIScuss. Just want to double check. So Doctor Who from the beginning has tried to make history fun and interesting. New Who is to agree with Lowe, trying to keep history relevant in the show, the moral side of things. So Chelsea is right there with you, Lo.
Thanks, Charles.
And she had to go get more tequila, so she's back though. But quick thing, Lahore is a little bit further from the Himalayas, I think, Chelsea, than it's on the other side of India than you're thinking perhaps. But geography lesson we'll save for the other time. We're going to dive into the TARDIS. And we are just going to remind people, if you're listening to this podcast and not joining us live here on our little hangout, that we're stepping into some areas that we don't know much about due to the circumstances of the partition of India, because again, happened 70 years ago, and knowing the tensions between more than just the Muslims, the Hindus, and the Sikhs, we don't want to discredit anyone's feelings or traditions. And we are hoping that we can have a great discussion around all the things, and we do want to be sensitive to that. So we are going to tread lightly. We are 3 white women who are not familiar with all the traditions of the religions and the regions. So we're diving in with our very sensitive shoes on. So, Lorena, why don't you take it away?
Okay. So I am rating this. I'm between an 8 and a 9 Tardai. I really enjoyed the episode. I thought it was super emotional, which I'm pretty sure is a through thread for everyone. Like every comment board I've read. But yeah, it was great to see Yaz kind of do the like personal history deep dive and get to really know her grandmother better and learn a lot, in the process. And then also myself learn a lot. I thought it was great. We've been excited about this one since week 1. So it definitely paid off. I thought like it was as good as we were hoping, or as I was hoping. And yeah, I mean, I think I love Yaz, so I was really excited we got as much as we did on her. And then also it was a pretty heartbreaking story. So I always like to cry. I won't lie. If Doctor Who can make me cry, then it's successful. So I guess then I'm probably leaning at 9, but all right. Laura?
So I am a 9 out of 10 Tardai, and of course my phone just reset itself, so I'm missing out on all my notes. Stand by, technical difficulties. So it's a 9 out of 10 for me. It was very emotional. As soon as like it clicked in my head when she was like, "That's not my granddad, that's not my granddad," and I was just like, "No, your nanny said that she was the first woman in Pakistan to get married. She didn't say to your granddad." And that's when it was just like, it's going to be one of these episodes where I cry. So, and I cried. And I learned a whole bunch. Like, this gave me a lot of things to look up and to learn about and to talk to people about. And I love and hate that a sci-fi show is teaching me about the world that I live in that my own education didn't teach me when I was in high school. So I loved this episode. I thought it was great. The only reason that it's not a 10 out of 10 for me is because I did figure out super fast that that her granddad was not who, like, the whole granddad thing. Like, I figured that out, and that kind of upset me a little bit because I don't want to figure things out before it happens. But what about you, Emily? What'd you think?
I am also a 9 out of 10. This, like the other two, gave me definitely all the feels. I When I was little, we subscribed to National Geographic magazines, and I there was one. I feel it was either on the cover or there was an article about this golden temple. And so I knew about the city of Amritsar, which is just across the border in India from Lahore. I did not know about Lahore. I knew more about Amritsar, and so I knew where that was on the map. I did not realize the proximity actually until last night, when I looked it up on the map. And I was like, oh, I mean, I'd always known that I'd wanted to go to Amritsar. So I knew a lot about India and I knew about the partition, but more because of my own curiosity. Um, but I didn't realize until last night how close that this was happening to what all was going on. So I just knew that there was this temple that I wanted to go and visit. It's a golden temple, and I was like, this is a gorgeous place, and I know people make pilgrimages there. And I knew that that was something I wanted to go and see. Um, that in mind, I know that's not technically anything to do with that. So I knew, so there were certain things when it has to do with the um, episode that I was just stunned by. We're gonna get into that about, how I'm just gonna roll into the next segment, how it's still Doctor Who-y, and the the Jarian, um, they were still proper monsters. They looked super scary, and the first time they appeared, you're like, "Whoa, who are you?" They speak telepathically, or communicate telepathically, I guess. W where they, where their big bulking heads, their tusks or teeth or pinchers, I feel very Harry Potter, sorry.
They were
Feeling a little,
Tusk. They were
yeah,
Tusk.
okay.
Yeah.
They could
Um,
be fangs.
Okay.
um, but because it also felt, um, there's another monster that it felt like, but not even a Doctor Who monster, and I can't place it. And I don't know what it was from, but I just am picturing something else, and I can't figure out which monster it came from. Um, and so I was just trying to understand who they were and follow that along. But still, they made the monsters scary enough that, before you understood them, that their mysteriousness and their ambiguity made it so that there was this cloud of mistrust around them. So, um, I I really thought that was great. Laura, what about you?
I thought they were super cool. I like how in the beginning they went from being demons, and then we find out that they're this ancient assassin race. Um, and as soon as she said they're like an ancient assassins, and they're one of the best assassins in the universe, and I'm like, you forgetting about the Weeping Angels? Because they're in there too. And then, it all kind of flipped around, and we find out that they're now just witnesses, and they're there to witness people dying and to be there with them as they die. And because they couldn't be there for their own species. I thought that was really cool. And I like that. And it is super Doctor Who-y, because you see this creature that looks like a bat. And you're like, it's horrific looking, and it has a lot of eyes, and it's like, super intimidating. And then you realize that they're really the good guys, and they're just kind of there so that people can not be alone when they're dying, which is super noble. And to me, that's just quintessential Doctor Who, that you can go from being a super scary looking monster to being like super noble good guy. So, but still a super scary looking monster. So yeah, I thought it was really cool. I love the whole creatures we're getting this season. Like, I just love the whole look of them and the feel of them. So I like that they're not necessarily evil, except for the toothy guy in the beginning. He was pretty evil. But like the Stitch looking thing last week, he was not evil. He was just hungry, and I'm often hungry and sometimes evil, so I get that. Lorena, what do you think of them?
Yeah, I really liked them. I liked that it was, as soon as they arrived, she got that telepathic press, and it was painful, and she was on edge from the start. And then, it was like, oh, we need to leave. And then it was just like, oh no, we have to stay now. Because, like that interference, I was definitely worried about the time bats returning, like in the Father's Day episode with Rose. Obviously they didn't, but yeah, there was just like that suspense to them. And then it sort of helped drive the plot to keep them there, which I felt is very timey-wimey. I think we were going to chat on that a little bit later. But yeah, I thought they were cool. And I agree with you, Laura, that the monsters this season are kind of like, I mean, I know you felt like Stitch was too Stitch-like, but I feel like it's unique within the Doctor Who universe, and that we're seeing like just new stuff, and it's fun. So I definitely agree with that. And I think they've all looked pretty distinct from each other. So that's been good too. They haven't all been humanoid, and I'm excited for kind of like next week looks a little more human or androidy. So that'll be fun too. Back in space. So yeah, I think they're cool. I'm excited.
Awesome. So having some humor without making light of the situation. We definitely were able to still, again, keeping that Doctor Who-iness without losing the gravity of the situation. And mine came more towards the end when Yaz was sitting with her nanny, and the nanny was saying the henna for the wedding. Or no, I'm sorry, when the doctor was sitting for the henna, and she's like, I've never done this when I was a man. And then she said something like the gender, and all references to gender regeneration or anything are all in jest. I just thought that was hysterical. Lorena?
Yeah, I laughed at that. Where, Yaz was like, that's not the thing. But it was, for me, my funny, like the one that stuck out to me the most was when they're packing all the stuff to leave, which is like, they're about to be murdered basically. And sees the map on the wall, and she's just like, what is this? And she's like, oh yeah, my dad brought that back once. And I just closed my eyes and pointed, and I pointed to Sheffield. Sounds exotic, doesn't it? And it's just like, no. But then also like, yes, this is so like dumb how you ended up in Sheffield, is like you literally pointed at a map, like you did the dart thing, and then later we get that callback where her grandma is like, Sheffield, it's not as exotic as I thought it would be, and I was like, oh good, we're gonna get that callback. But that does jump a little more to the timey-wimey. So
But how much do we think that, like Lahore sounds exotic to all of us, and we're like,
yeah, I mean, it really just sounds like you're saying whore to me. So that name, I did think about that though. I was thinking about my friends have recently been traveling in Japan, and like all of the names are just so foreign. I'm like, yeah, there is like that sexiness to somewhere that's so different from your language sounds. Like it just noises you don't typically make, like movements with your mouth you don't typically make. So I can see where Sheffield could feel good to someone who didn't say a lot of F's or something, a lot of sh. I don't know.
I'm sorry. I say a lot of F's. Probably
a lot of sh as well.
And a lot of shaz as well.
Yeah.
that got me.
All right. Take another shot, Chelsea, if you're doing your F-bomb drinking game.
I love it. I thought one of the funniest moments for me for the whole show is at the end when she's sitting on the couch and she's her nanny makes a comment about the henna on her hands and she says it's a terrible job, and I was just like, you can't even give an inch, can ya? You know, and I'm just like, God bless you, because that's so my Nana right there. My Nana would have been the exact same way, just kind of a battle axe then and now, and I love it. I love tough women. So to me, that was one of the best moments of the entire episode. But I'm gonna mute myself so I don't drop any Fs.
Well, I went to go check on Chelsea and see if she had any comments. She did actually. So apparently, the Himalayan mountains range is much longer than that, and so she objected to my geography reference. We'll fight offline about that. So, but I don't see that she's there presently. Let's get into our feelings. If we had a little Drake and rights to the Drake, we'd play that right now because we're in our feelings right now.
I don't know that song. I don't listen to Drake, so you got to count me out for that one. You can Ryan Sinclair me right now.
I'm going to be down with the kids. Come on. I'm gonna EGBTT here and be down with the kids.
Do it.
So I cried so many times in this episode, and I then watched it the second time to see if I could watch it without crying, and it didn't work. And then I tried to watch a snippet, and it didn't work because then I started crying again. And yeah, so I'm gonna try to make it through this without crying. So I'm very full of the feels. So when the Sajarians are explaining that they lost their home to the doctor, and then they are talking about that their new purpose is that they now remember the lost and unacknowledged dead. I just lost it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna cry. And I don't know if it was because I was watching it on like Veterans Day, if I had been because of things that are happening here in California with fires and a recent mass shooting, and there were some other things that had happened, other things happening in the world. Then there was a scene where it shifted, and then there was a field of poppies, and I understand that poppies are native to that particular area. But then I remembered that this episode aired on November 11th, which is Remembrance Day in the UK or Veterans Day here in the US, and many other places. And it was the 100th anniversary of World War I and Armistice Day. And I just felt there was such a ton of beautiful symbolism in this episode, and I just cried even more. And then I cried at the wedding, and then I cried with Yaz, and I there were just so many cryings on all the many different things, and I'm crying, and I'm not going to cry now because now I'm going to turn it over to Lorena, and I'm done.
Okay. Well, thank you, Emily, for keeping it together. I did not cry as much as Emily, which is good, probably, because crying is painful. Even though you guys know I do like a good cry during an episode. It sounds like Emily cried the whole time, which wasn't happening for me. I teared up at little places, but I definitely agree about the poppies. It was like a nice extra, like, homage to the day. And I watch a lot of British Premier League football, called soccer in the US. And So I was watching that in the morning on Sunday, and they all have their, you know, it was the 100-year, as Emily mentioned. And so it was like really big deal this year. Normally they just have their puppies and their lapels and all of that. And the players have, you know, a little puppy, like painted on or something. What are they? It's like a patch, painted on. It's like a vinyl patch. That's why I said paint. Anyway, so I was already in this Remembrance Day mode, even though where I'm living, it's Veterans Day. You know, it was more like I was in the UK in my mind. So then to see it in the show, it was like, of course there's poppies on today's show, right? And then to think about it in the bigger context of like 2 million people died because of like what happened that day, I thought was just like really impactful. And it is sad. I mean, there's not another word. It's just really sad. And I actually, what got me the most was when the Prem went to like touch his brother, you know, to be like, come back to your senses, right? You know, come back to humanity. And his brother pushed his hand away. And, you know, you already knew he was going to get killed. Like you knew it was going to happen. But it was just like that final rejection and hatred and intolerance. And he just couldn't just couldn't see, love, you know, and it was so like, love is going to win in like this moment. And it's real. Like this really happened, to so many people. Like obviously not these actual people weren't real, but this event was real. This really happened. Like they chose to have two brothers come at each other after already losing so much. And that's the story that, you know, Vinay chose to tell. And that the two other, you know, the two women got away. And she carried that with her forever. You know, she carried that symbol of their love forever. You know, like this moment frozen in time. And so there's just like so much symbolism in it that it was super like, now it's more sad than when I was watching it as I'm like reflecting. And I think it was really just like Yaz getting to know this really tragic event about her grandmother and like really coming to understand what partition meant to her family, and that it was so horrible she chose to lie, you know, and to hide it and to keep it a secret, because she didn't want to have to keep reliving it with her family. And I thought that was just so real because, you know, like I know my grandparents were very private people. My grandfather was in the Navy, and like he just would not talk about anything that happened during the war. And just like they don't tell older stories. They were immigrants, like very young. Same kind of thing where they were leaving somewhere and coming to America, and just like you don't really know what happened. Like you just don't know. No one tells you. And then they've both passed away. So you just, you know, it dies with them. And it's like, I could totally relate to Yaz. And I think that was what, to me, gave me the most emotion was when she saw how the watch broke. And it was him trying to do the Muslim tradition, and she's Muslim. And it was just like, extra, like it's something so familiar to her as a tradition that then to see it played out and knowing he's gonna die, like she already knows that. And it was just so sad and just like, all right, Laura, take the pain, bring it on.
So for me, this episode was super emotional. Graham made me cry. Again, that character, I never thought that I would love a companion more than I loved Donna. I thought Donna was just such a great companion. But Graham is really like, he might be my all-time favorite companion, just because he just is so honest in his feelings. And maybe it's because he's a cancer survivor and he just lost his wife and he's traveling around with his step grandson and doing all these really cool things. Like he's really in it to live in the moment. And that to me, and he's seeing all these really cool things, but really awful things. I really like that. I thought for sure, like in the first episode, that I wasn't really going to like Graham a whole lot. And I'm really happy that I don't feel that way anymore. I really enjoy his character. For me, the awfulness of this episode, like the literal line that was drawn between two brothers, is something that I think is really relatable to now. Not just, in America, but all across the world. I think we're kind of at like a precipice in time right now. And I think that whether it's our religion or political beliefs or our own personal moral compasses, we're just at a very polarizing time. And the thought that one day we might have our own stories that we don't want to tell our own loved ones or grandkids is scary. I remember my granddad, he fought under General Patton, and he drove a tank, and he was there on the beaches. It was awful. He would not talk about it. And then about like a year or two before he passed away, he started just talking about it all the time. And he wanted to be buried in Arlington, which is something before he had not really wanted. And he was ready to talk about it. He passed away at 94. He had time to deal with what he had to deal with. And he told me this story one time, and it was really cool. He was there when they started liberating the concentration camps, and he was telling me this story about that. And he was telling me about when he was at the Maginot Line, and it's amazing to me because he lived this life and he saw these horrible things, and he was the nicest, gentlest man. And I think that's the other reason this episode was so hard for me to watch, is because I could feel the fact that Yaz's grandmother did not want to talk about these things. She was still feeling it. She was still dealing with it. And she offered to talk about it with her granddaughter. And that was like all the times that my granddad would sit down with me and my brothers and my husband and my parents and talk about these things that he experienced, that he wouldn't talk about for my entire life and my dad's entire life. And it just really brings it back to the moment that like these things happen all the time. And the fact that a sci-fi show can kind of wake you up and shake you up is a really cool thing. And I just have to say this. I think it's very interesting that an event that occurred and really has nothing to do with the United States can make us all feel so many powerful emotions. It shows us that we are just all humans. I had never heard about this until I watched this Doctor Who episode, which is something I'll talk a little bit more about in a little bit. But it just tells you that you can find out about another human being's experience, and you can not put yourself in that situation, but you can just imagine how, as a human, it would impact them. And I think that that is something that as human beings, we need to do every single day with basically every single person you meet. You really have to put yourself in other people's shoes all the time. And I think that if we did that more, we would have far less problems in this world. So my name is Laura, and thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Laura, you made all of us cry again. Thank you. And now I'm scared. Like, I'm scared our war is coming. Like, you've frightened me. You did bring up part of the show, and kind of the ending of the show when she offers to tell her the story about the watch. And that to me, like your take on it, I love, because it's like really honest and real, and I totally get it because I didn't get that that moment of my grandfather opening up ever. So I feel that, but I wondered, and this is my timey-wimey bit, but I wondered, wouldn't she remember these 4 random people, clearly not from the area and not related to her at all, showing up on her wedding day, this cursed wedding, that was like already an ordeal. On the day of partition, these British people just randomly show up. Wouldn't she remember that? First of all. Second, the henna was a notably bad design, apparently. I don't know anything about henna, so it could have been exquisite. I don't know. But everyone in the episode seemed to think it wasn't very good. And so perhaps it was memorably bad. I don't know. But she was there for it and saw it and would have seen Yaz getting it done. Conveniently, Yaz has the same name as this random person who, it was like, she must know. And if Manish had always been planning to kill the holy man because the aliens had already come, because they knew that was going to happen, then who would have married them? And so if she, when we first enter the timeline, at the beginning of the episode, has been already married, the first person to be married in Pakistan, the watch has already been broken. Like, wouldn't she have had to have gotten married for all of that to have happened? So then was the doctor interfering and Yaz interfering already part of her history? And I think that's my headcanon I'm going with. I really felt like how the story unfolded, it had to be almost like they fulfilled this destiny that had to happen, but had already happened, but couldn't have happened. So it's like this weird thing, this very timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly thing, that wasn't a straight line of time. I don't know. I just felt like there was too many things that couldn't have happened, but were meant to happen, for it to not have been that the doctor and team were meant to be there for the event. So did anyone have that same wibbly wobbly feeling, or am I alone?
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
I agree with you on this. And I didn't think it out as far as you did, but I love the way that you thought it out, because it makes total sense. Like, this woman, Yaz's nanny, she's on top of it. She is sharp. So it's not like she's going to look at her granddaughter's palm of her hand and be like, oh, that's just some terrible henna. Like, she has to know. You know what? I'm going to call it. She knows. She knows.
I feel she has to know. Like,
yeah.
But I agree with you, Lorena. Like, she, I mean, unless it's something like, I mean, the doctor was like, you didn't know, like, she will have just thought it was 4 people who were there. I don't know. Because wasn't it like Rose's mother saw a blonde woman, but couldn't remember who it was?
No, but she saw like her in the road leaning over her dad. She didn't see her face, and then the woman disappeared, like wasn't there anymore.
Okay.
In this case, they spent a whole night with them. Like,
Okay.
It was a lot of time. Like, I would say a good 24 hours, a good 23 more hours than they were supposed to be there.
Right.
So,
right. During like for Rose's thing. I think, that was like a traumatic event. You can kind of like, you block certain things out. You don't remember certain things during traumatic events. This was, while yes, an extremely traumatic event, was like prolonged and, little smatterings of not so traumatic. So yeah.
Right.
And yeah, also I would say, like, why would she choose to give her the watch, as the gift, and be like, this is like the best gift ever. It was almost like she already knew she was part of this story. And then when she says at the end, do you still want to hear the story about, this watch?
Right.
It's almost like she knows you were part of the story. Like,
right.
You are in it. And how cool is that? I don't know.
Well, and Laura, like you said, you heard her, I was the first person married in Pakistan or something, and you heard something. When she gave the watch, she didn't say this was your grandfather's watch.
Right.
Like there was something along the lines that I'm like, there's something funky, because she didn't say this is your grandfather's watch. It's something else. So I was just like, interesting.
Yeah.
Also, I have
yes.
another watch thought.
Yes.
When they go to the event, they use the watch into the TARDIS, like telepathic matrix, to put it simply. And yeah, so to me, it's like, we know the TARDIS knows how to get to where we need to be for the event. And so I thought, like, them arriving right when he's going on the cart and the holy man's about to die was just like, you have to arrive at this moment in time in this location for the action events to play out the way they're meant to. Almost like the TARDIS knows, which would mean actually that the aliens should have known that they were coming. So there could be plot holes, or we could just call it wibbly wobbly. You decide.
Wibbly wobbly.
Okay.
I'm more forgiving on this episode. I don't know why.
Because you cried a lot.
Maybe.
Because of the feels.
Yeah. Feels. Well, I'm going to say we're almost close to being done. So we're going to talk about any episode hills that we'll die on, because I'm going to say I don't know that I really even had any, except for the person who played Manish. I feel when he put his glasses on, I almost thought that there was a fourth brother. I don't know if we're calling it a Clark Kent effect, because at first I was really confused, and I thought, wait, who is this person? Is this another person from the town who's now protesting the wedding? I wasn't sure. And so it just bugged me, and it's small, and I don't know if it's really a hill I want to die on, because it's not something to die over. So I don't know if it's really a hill. There you go.
He still looks like Manish to me. I have no hills. So, Laura.
Oh, I have a hill. I have a mountain. First, I want to say that I agree with Emily. When he put those glasses on, I thought it was a different person too. I also want to point out that he looks super, super cute with glasses, and he should consider them. I don't know if like the actor has to wear glasses, but he should consider them full time. So, not that he wasn't cute without them. It just, some people look real cute with glasses. She points to her glasses. Okay, so my hill/mountain is this. I am super, super pissed about my education. And the reason why is because I didn't learn about antimatter in high school science, and Yaz did. And it could just be because I'm a lot older than Yaz, so maybe it just wasn't a thing that they taught high schoolers back then. But I feel like they probably knew something, and I could have learned about it. Also, I did not learn anything about this, and I feel incredibly stupid and very ignorant that I had no idea that Pakistan was once a part of India. And that really bothers me to the point where I forced my husband to have a very long conversation with me and a very good mutual friend of ours about this. So my husband is quite a bit older than me. He's 9 years older. I don't know why I say quite a bit. That makes it sound weird. But he grew up, he went to high school, at least in Kansas. So I asked him, and he did not learn about this in high school either. And he was very upset that he didn't know that Pakistan was once part of India. So then we called our friend, who's been my husband's best friend for longer than 15 years, and asked him, because he said, look, I'm really sorry that I didn't know this. Our friend is half Pakistani. And our friend tells us he didn't know either. Okay. And his friend grew up where we live now. So we have basically the same education. He said he didn't know about it either until he was in college and a girl in college told him about it. So it does make me feel better that I just wasn't paying attention in history class, because I love history. So if that was the case, I was going to hate myself. But it also pisses me off that we learned so much about US history and like the European world history. Like that was world history, was like, this is England and France and, whatever. But we didn't learn about this. 2 million people died. 14 million people were displaced. And they just didn't think that that was important for us to learn. Like I would have really wanted to learn about this in high school. So that's my episode hill that I am willing to die on, is that my education is lacking. And it's not a Doctor Who flaw. It's an American public school system flaw. But that's all I have for today.
I think that's a great hill. We actually had a comment on YouTube. Stefan, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to say your name, did make a good point that don't you think Nani knows that Yaz was there because she called Yaz her favorite and gave Yaz the watch. So it would indicate that Nani knows because she is her favorite.
That's what I said. Why would she give her the watch?
But also,
I agree, Stephen Stefan. I can't see the spelling. Sorry.
I love this.
Stephen. Stefan?
Stephen.
I would say Stephen.
Okay.
I'm calling it.
We agree. We agree.
We agree with you.
Yes. 1000%.
Good call,
I mean, well, I didn't know the favorite. That to me felt like normal to their family dynamic we've seen so far. Just that she would say that in front of the sister just to be, silly. But yeah, maybe she is the favorite because she enabled her to get married.
I 100% believe that Yaz is the favorite, and I have two very compelling reasons for this. Number one, the reason is because she is doing her own thing. She's a police officer, and her grandmother would absolutely love her being an independent woman, getting out there and making that money. And two, because Yaz's sister is kind of a snot, and she just doesn't seem to be very redeemable at this point. And I could be wrong, because I also thought that Graham wasn't that great in the beginning, and I was super wrong about that. But I feel like Nani was being very bluntly honest there, which is also reminiscent of my Nana. So I love her even more.
Very good. I didn't mean to squash your episode, Hill, about the American public school system being lacking in their colonization, education, downfalls.
Basically, all education not related to U.S. history or the Second World War, and how the U.S. was impacted by that war, and then communism in the U.S. though, not anywhere else, just like specifically in the U.S.
Yes,
that's all we covered in my Florida public school education, which is ranked pretty low on the list of states. So.
You get through World War II and then communism bad, and that's about it.
Communism was taught in my civics class, actually, which was not a required class. I chose to take that class. So
yeah, civics definitely needs to be required. Like, I agree, McCarthyism was super important, especially considering the time period that we're currently living in. It's good to know about, people going out on witch hunts, but There's a lot of other things that happen in this world besides the things that happen in America.
Yeah.
It'd be nice
Watch
to
The Crucible.
Yeah.
That's covered then.
Yeah, exactly.
All good. Or Fantastic Beasts, you know.
Yeah.
Same theme.
Yeah.
Same theme.
Basically.
Well, next week, you can join us Tuesday for Doctor Who Hangout for TARDIScuss, where we're going to be talking about Kerblam. Or you can join us Wednesday for a pre-Thanksgiving fun, where we are, the three of us are going to be joined by two other fun friends, and we are going to have a Fantastic Beasts hangout. So if you love us so much and you find our pop-ins of Harry Potter trivia fantastic, you will want to join us for Fantastic Beasts on Wednesday, TARDIScuss on Tuesday. We are just here. You love the sound of our melodic voices. We know everything. We love the sound of our own voices. You know,
We do not
join
know
us.
everything. I am not a Ravenclaw.
I am a Ravenclaw.
I am a Ravenclaw, so there's that.
Do we know what house Zaneba's in?
No.
Oh, I don't
She
know.
didn't reply yet.
Yeah, I know Jamie is also a Ravenclaw, so
Proud Slytherin right here.
We have right now. We know we have 3 Ravenclaws and a Slytherin, and
This house.
our group text has 3 eagles and a snake on it. So
it's pretty amazing.
it is. It is. You guys, thank you so much for joining us live. You can download the podcast from iTunes. Just check out the Totally Normal podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.